All right, we are live. We'll wait for a few minutes to allow people to join in here. If you do join and you're live on the chat board there in the public chat, give me a thumbs up that our cameras are working well and that our audio is working well. Unfortunately, I can't make Frank and Chris look better than they already do. But if you could get me a filter, that would be great. But for those that are joining, I'm going to take some time. Looks like Danielle raised her hand. Kelly, thank you. So we'll probably, just for those joining and for Frank and Chris on the phone, thanks for joining today, gentlemen. We're probably going to take about at least 30 seconds to a minute here of awkwardness as people join the call. But it looks like the cameras are working great. Thanks for the comment there, Brent Baldwin, about my scruff. We do have people from all over the world joining today. Frank, you are a legend, not just in Canada, but elsewhere. I cannot believe it because I just think you're a regular dude. Oh, I'm kidding. You're incredible. But we have people from all over the world here today, and we'll give them another 30 seconds. For those that are there right now, you'll see you're obviously clicking in the chat there. There will be a Q&A time at the end, but you can quickly put you can send me direct messages or questions. I won't be able to get to everyone, but Macy, who's helping me here in producing this, she'll look for questions as well. So it looks like I'm just looking at the amount of people here. Now, for some weird reason, if we do get cut off or the audio or video goes off, just rejoin. And it looks like people are saying Frank has the best background. I'm in my little work office. Frank, are you at your office, Frank, in Vancouver?
I'm at the office. I pretty much go every day.
It's amazing. So I've got some private comments here. So we're at about 51. I know about 150 registered. We're going to get started. All right. Welcome, everyone. We have about 40 minutes of content for you today. I'm going to shut up real quick. My name is Ryan. I'm one of the co-founders, along with Chris Nealon here, of a company called Communo. Today, we are going to be featuring Frank Palmer. I'm sure that's what everyone's here to listen to today, not hear from me. And I'm excited, Frank, to hear from you as well. We have lots of chats. Frank has been a mentor from afar in the early parts of my career, and lately became a friend and a mentor up close. And I really appreciate you, Frank, coming on today. And I know you and Chris are going to have a good conversation. Chris Nealon is the co-founder of Cult Collective as well. So for those agency folks on the call, Chris not only is building the future of work with Communo, but he's also an agency owner just like you folks on the phone, and has been for a long time. So like Chris likes to say, he's not only a hair club for men customer, he's also the founder, and that's how it is with Communo. So I'm going to turn it over right now to Chris. Just really quickly, at the end of this, it's first come, first serve. We have about 150 signed up. I don't know how many will show up in the end, but we have a follow-up to this event called the Communo Adoption Framework next Tuesday at 2:30 Mountain Time. Email macy@communo.com or message me in the chat. We only have 30 spots available for it, so if my math is correct, about 20% of you will be able to join. And the offer for that is here. I'm just going to quickly show it. Let me know if you can see it. I will put it in the full screen. If you'd like to click that now, it's typically $500. We're doing it for free, and we know it will fill up. Last one we had a huge waiting list, so I will show this again at the end of the webinar. That's all the details. I'm going to go back to Chris and Frank. Over to you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. And Frank, I think that when we first invited you onto this program and you were gracious enough to accept, you were already really busy. And that was, I think, a week or two before the public announcement that you've been brought back to run DDB Vancouver. So you're only busier than you, I would imagine, have ever been. So I really appreciate the hour. We have a couple of topics that we want to cover today. But before we get into sort of predictions on the future and ways that firms can remain relevant, I want to maybe take 5 minutes and just pay some homage to the journey that you've been on. You have built, obviously, this legendary career. You've been well, I think, awarded and received lots of public accolades. I'm kind of curious, when you think back on the past 50 years, what brings you the most joy? What would maybe be a story or two that comes top of mind of something that you're most proud of that we might be able to learn something from?
Well, I think there's a number of them. I mean, it's obviously it's a lot of people that have gone through the halls of our agency. When I started off with a company that was called Trend Advertising, and it led to a couple of other names that caused along the way: Simmons, Palmer, Leckie, Palmer Jarvis, Palmer Jarvis DDB, and then DDB. So I think one of the things that I think I'm pretty proud about is the fact that there's just probably not an agency in Western Canada, and maybe even in Eastern Canada, that some of the folks haven't gone through working for me at one time or another, or working with me at one time or another. So it's nice to see that some of the agencies that are really doing well, like Rethink and other agencies, including DDB still, that are doing really well. And those people came through DDB and through Palmer Jarvis. And so for me, and still being able to reach out to them and call them friends. I mean, even though people went on their own way to create their own companies and left us, I was proud of the fact that we were able to play a role in their career going forward. And along the way, I've had an opportunity to work with some of the very best clients in my lifetime, and that's, for me, it's always been proud of all that. I mean, there's been ups and downs. There's been winning of the McDonald's business. I remember winning that account probably 40 odd years ago, and it was one of those tricks that McDonald's played on me, was the fact that we were down to two agencies, and then they said, well, there's just a couple more things that we have to talk about. And George Jarvis at the time, my partner, and I said, boy, I wonder what it is that we didn't do right or we're doing wrong. We're really nervous about this. And of course, what happened is they showed up with French fries and milkshakes and quarter pounders with cheese or whatever it was at the time to tell us that we had won the account. And of course, we just about died on that particular occasion. And I remember getting so excited I spilled chocolate milkshake all over the rug in my office, which took me a long time to get out. But of course, it was one of those enjoyable moments and something that really changed, I think, my life when we won an account like that. And then, of course, many years later, I lost it. And in one of the markets, and it's kind of a story about Edmonton, I was in the meeting room and pitching the account. I knew that we had a few problems with it, and I was watching all the people that were there for McDonald's and watching their faces. And I knew at the time we didn't do a very good presentation. And one of the marketing directors wrote on a piece of paper and passed it over to the president at that time. That was Ron Marcoux. And they nodded with each other, and they ripped up a piece of paper and put it in a coffee cup. And being the police detective that I wanted to be at one point in time, I went back and put the piece of paper together, and it said, "Time for an agency review." And but we never gave up. I mean, the fact is that one of the things that I like to pride myself on is the fact that no is not a good answer. You know, keep working on it until you get a yes. Eventually, you wear them out. But I had stayed true to McDonald's for all those years, and tried to help them. I got them involved in certain charities and Special Olympics, etc. And I got called back in by the president and said, "Frank, we need to see you right now." And I went out to the McDonald's head office in Western Canada, and the same people that fired us that were sitting around the table were the same people that were there in the room. And they said, we know we wanted to get you out here for a reason, Frank, but I guess you heard the rumor that we were looking for an advertising agency again in Alberta, and we're not too happy with the agency we have. I said, I know that. And they said, well, we know that we can't allow you to pitch it either. And I said, I know that. And they said, we just want to give it back to you. I was dumbfounded. I didn't know what to say at the time. But the fact was that we stayed true to the course and got the business back and kept it for many, many years later. So the stories that I have about the industry itself is something that I've it's been a love of my life. I've never really felt that I work for a living. I felt that I continue to go to every day to work with a new topic or a new opportunity or something we have to resolve for our clients. So for me, it's a lifetime of enjoyment.
Well, I mean, I certainly know enough people who know you and have anecdotes of working with you. And I think one thing that's most remarkable is in what could be considered a fairly cutthroat, if not even catty industry of people prioritizing the work over the relationships. You've always seemed to do the opposite. And I'm sure that there have been a lot of tough conversations, but the fact that clients come back, people come back, whether they quit or they were fired, somebody always seems to have something positive to say about you is a real testament to your character and your integrity. I am curious, is there, you mentioned the people that have come through your doors, the clients that have come through their doors. Is there a particular campaign or piece of work that you sometimes go to bed thinking about as that was awesome?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of work that we've done over the years. I mean, a lot of the work that we haven't done, I wish we'd had done, because there's so many campaigns out there that were so simple. I mean, one of the campaigns that I can say that we did that I'm pretty proud of was for Greyhound Air when we had a chance to launch a new airline in Canada. And Greyhound, of course, had the reputation of being reasonable bus lines where you could travel across Canada. They thought they had a great name for an airline. Unfortunate part about it was they started a little bit late, but the campaign that we did, I had to pitch to a board of directors that were about 40 aged white guys in the room, and had to pitch it. They're pretty stiff. At the time, we created a campaign where we trained the Greyhound to pee on the wheel, and we had to shoot the commercial where the Greyhound would walk over to the airline on the front wheel, lift a leg, and pee on the wheel, and it said "Marking New Territory, Greyhound Air." Well, it was only one take too, because you can't let a Greyhound run around on the airport tarmac, otherwise they'll shoot it. But the funny story was that I had to go into that room with the marketing director and pitch that idea. And I got up and I pitched it, and the dead silence in the room was like a lifetime. It was only about 10 seconds. And one of the gentlemen who was the board of directors said, "That's the best campaign I think I've ever seen." So it was sold, but I got to tell you, I was sweating, big time sweating. But I mean, those kind of stories throughout our lifetime, and some of the ways that I got trust factor built in, because one of the things about me is that I remember the story that when I pitched a campaign to a client that was a service station business, and they would put ethanol in with their gasoline to make it go better and go further. And I remember when we pitched the account, again, I was watching the action in the room and watching the Mohawk Oil, Mother Nature's gas station, and I was watching the client's eyes, and I knew that he was a little bit unsettled with the campaign. So I waited till he got back to Burnaby, which is about an hour away from where our office was. And I phoned him and I said, "Bill," I said, "I'm just calling you." And he said, "Yeah, Frank." I said, how do you feel? And I said, "Look, you look a little bit nervous." Or he said, "I am, but I got to trust you, and I got to trust the agency and marketing people." I said, "Well, but you're nervous." He said, "Yeah, I'm a bit nervous." I said, "Well, I'm not going to let you do it." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm not going to let you do the campaign." He said, "What am I going to do?" I said, "Well, you're going to go to your marketing director and tell him you're nervous and you want an agency to come up with a new campaign." He says, "Can I do that?" I said, "Bill, You're the president. You can do anything you want. And so about an hour later, my guy comes back into who sold the campaign with me in the room, comes back and he says, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "What?" He said, "We're going to do the campaign all over because Bill's nervous." I said, "Really?" But guess what I could have done from that point on with that client? Anything I wanted. And I think that one of the things that advertising agencies need to do more of is push back and tell the client what they need to do and not what they shouldn't do. And it reminds me of a joke that I've used in some cases where the dog food client, let's call it Purina, said to his marketing director, he said, "I need to get, our campaign sales are terrible. I want to spend $10 million. I want you to hire the best agency in the world. And I want you to give me the best spokesperson. Can you do that?" And you got 2 months. I want to see where our sales go. 2 months later, it comes back and says, "Our sales are still terrible. Did you get the best agency?" "Yeah, I heard the best agency." "Well, you get the best spokesperson?" "Yeah, I got the best spokesperson." "You spend the $10 million?" "Yeah, I spent $10 million. What's wrong? Our sales are still going down." He said, "Well, sir, we did some research." And what did you find out? He says, "The dogs won't eat it."
Yeah,
So
exactly.
the point is that advertising agencies, for the longest period of time, don't take the high road to tell their client that their product or service should be improved before we spend any money. And I think that we can do a better service going forward when we tell a client, "Look, we'll take your money, but we want to help you create a better product or service, because then we'll have to spend less money maybe than we have to spend trying to enforce a lot of people to find out that the product or service isn't that good." So for me, even today, having gone through a career of all these years, I think the trust factor and being honest is most important, to let a client know that you got their best interest at heart.
Well, so let's talk about that. I mean, it's a wonderful segue to, I think, some of the, I mean, we could spend the full hour on memory lane because you've got amazing stories, but I actually feel like your best days may be ahead of you. I don't know where you find your enthusiasm or energy or what sort of supplements that you're on, but it's fairly remarkable that this is yet another chapter of your life. And I think you're attacking it with a vigor of people half your age. But one of the things I've heard you talk about many times is this idea of agencies' responsibility to help their clients improve their product or service. And I just don't see that very often. I think that too many agencies think that their job is to communicate rather than to create value. And I don't know, do you think that that we have devolved as a craft, or do you think that clients are putting us in a corner? Why are we not better at actually improving products and services as an industry?
Because we're afraid of pushing back. And I said, the difference between advertising is and marketing. You've got to determine whether client, what their product is all about, or their services are about, and whether it's good or inferior or better or whatever it is, or worse. And advertising is you end up promoting whatever it is that they want to say. And one of the things that I'm very strong on right now is that we had a client come to us, a major client, saying to us, "We'd like you to work on our business and probably get the business without a pitch." And I said, "Well, here's the problem." And I said, "I don't want to sound like I have the answer up front, but I think I do, is that you're going to go out and you're going to look at another advertising agency, because it's going to be like Romancing the Stone or Romance Again, that you're going to get this new agency who's come forth and we're going to do all these fancy things for you. And you got all these new people, and they've given the same line that they have for years." And I said to the client, I said, "It's not going to work." And they said, "Why is it not going to work?" Because I said, "Because you're not going to change your offering. You're going to keep your structure the same as it was before, with every agency you've ever gone through that have lasted more than 2 or 3 years." And the reasons the problem is? The problem is with you. It's not our problem. It's your problem. You want to get, you're trying to get an agency to do exactly what you want. And when you get what you want, you can find out that you don't like it, because it's not going to make your product or service any better. You're going to get the same results. So the fact is, going forward, I want to be able to say to a client, "Can we improve your product or service before we start to promote it?" And if you don't want to do that, then you're not going to get the results that you want to get.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the past decade, it's probably a toss-up. Dove and the work that they've done with Real Beauty, I think, has a chance to be sort of the campaign of the decade. I personally like what Domino's Pizza did and what they call now the turnaround. And that's the urban legend, at least, is that Crispin Porter gave them half of the money back that was earmarked for media and said, just go make a better pizza. And then they had this brilliant idea of let's film it, and the courage of the CEO to go on national television and say that their pizza tastes like crap and we're going to fix it. But I do worry that I don't know whether we're desperate. I don't know whether we've gotten cowardly, but I just don't see many agencies pushing back. I don't see many clients being receptive to agencies pushing back. They just want, the logo bigger, the flyer more blue, the media louder, and we're not actually fixing the real problems of business these days.
You're right. I think that probably the problem is that there's too many CEOs that got out of the boardroom, and not saying that marketing directors haven't got the power or the knowledge or the strategy right, but when you find that the CEO is leaving a lot of the decisions for marketing in the hands of other people, their message isn't being loud and clear. And I used to say to people, because when I knew the clients a lot better than I know today, because I had access to the president, he or she, and I'd sit down with them, and more often than not, they wanted to spend most of their time talking about their life, their issues, their problems. Then you get around to advertising. And the marketing director would say, hey, listen, I know what my client wants. And he would say, I even know the color of his eyes. I say, yeah, but I know the shade. Okay. And my point is that I knew what I could and couldn't do with the client. I know how far I could take them and how far I could push it. And what you get today, and in all fairness, is I think that 80% plus of advertising is ineffective and crap. And I don't care where it's on TV or whether it's on social media or whether it's on billboards. There's very little advertising out there to me that goes, hey, that really is fantastic. I mean, a campaign that I can remember that I thought was brilliant was that Shreddies, where the the Shreddies came along and they stopped the belt because one of the Shreddies was turned sideways, and they said, hey, new diamond-shaped Shreddies. And I go, why didn't I think of that? It's so simple that they can reel on Shreddies with nothing new other than the sign on the box that says new.
That's funny.
There was an old commercial that was done by Tabasco sauce where the guy, a little heavy-set guy, it was done by DDB in Chicago, and it was ordering a slice of pizza. He had it in his hand, and then he saw a little mosquito flying around, and you could hear the sound of the mosquito, and he takes the Tabasco sauce and he puts it on the pizza slice, and the mosquito comes in to take a drink out of his arm, flies away and goes boom.
Mm-hmm.
No sound, just no words. You just knew that it was hot. And clients have to really look at what they're trying to say and not put so much into it that it doesn't say anything.
Yeah. Well, and I agree. And sometimes, I'm envious that, does somebody with your reputation have an easier job convincing clients to, simplify, get back to the one big idea, get back to better storytelling? Or do you run into the same struggles as a 30-year-old art director that's just hung their own shingle on of saying it doesn't matter what your reputation was. It's about, has the world fundamentally shifted? And those glory days, because both those campaigns you mentioned are over a decade old, and has social media and commoditization and the abundance or the fight for attention. Is it just too new of a game now?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things. I mean, I still think that there's not enough CEOs back in the boardroom again. And I think that when you get people of a high authority that you can sort of say, you should do this. I mean, when the What's Up was done by the What's Up.
Budweiser guys. Yeah.
Budweiser guy. I mean, the guy that actually sold that was Keith Reinhardt, who I talked to yesterday for about an hour, because he's writing a piece on ageism and why the agency business isn't continuing with elderly people or people that still have a spirit like myself is because the average person in the agency business, maybe in the creative department, might be 26 to 30 or something like that. But the fact is that there's some of these other people that have been around and they have the experience to know where to not walk anymore. And so he's writing he's writing a piece on it, which I read yesterday. It's quite interesting. But the fact is that we still struggle, doesn't matter what age you are, it's getting to the top people in the company that we believe that needs to make a decision. And so we have to find ways of being able to reach out and talk to those people to say, listen, we're here to help you, not hurt you. And I think that you're going to spend a lot less money if you do it right than what you're continuing to do it now. So my audience is, I can't say I'm getting closer to it, but I think that one of the agencies that still is one of the best ones is Rethink. And I just read an article where they just did this little promotion with hot dogs to get hot dogs back in the hands of people who have to stay at home with ketchup. And they're going to do it with a delivery service. Well, that's really not an advertising. That's a marketing thing. But at the same time, it accomplished both. But then what you have is a brave agency and a brave client. And how often does that happen? It doesn't. Rare.
Well, tell the group, I don't know if everybody read your piece that you wrote recently on COVID and kind of comparing it to the meteor and comparing some of us to the dinosaurs. What's the punchline of what you want us to take away from that piece?
Well, I think what happened with COVID, I mean, look, there's a lot of businesses that were out there that are hanging on by their fingernails, and probably 40% of the advertising agencies are hanging on by their fingernails. And I'd say that not in being disrespectful, but the fact is that the majority of small agencies have 50% or more of their business with one or two clients, and that's very dangerous. It's almost like if you're the one customer that you have at Walmart, you're not in business. You're run by Walmart. You just have to be an outside employee, and that's too often with too many agencies that I know that there's 60 or 70% of their business is one client. And that client tells you what they want you to do. You don't have a choice in saying, here's what I recommend. You're being told, here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to say. And you're afraid to push back because you lost your business and you lost your client. So the fact is that when the extinction of the dinosaurs came a million years ago, there's a bunch of them out there called Dinosaurs Now. But who would have thought that when COVID came in and affected the restaurant business, the rental car business, the hotel business, it's also affected the advertising business, and it's not going to be corrected anytime soon. And because advertising agencies, they do the same thing over and over again for a client and expect different results. And the fact is that none of the agencies have really changed the way they operate. And I think what we're trying to do here is that we become a company that advises our client like a consultant, but at the same time, we've created a venture capital fund like Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, where clients can come to us with their thoughts and ideas in a startup mode, and we take it from start to finish and do the marketing. And we've got a relationship with a client based on a trust factor and ownership, that we can do things that we probably couldn't do with a normal relationship that has been around for the same years. And of course, what COVID did, it just spun up the process the restaurants that were making virtually not a lot of money prior to COVID, how do they make money on operating on 40%? Well, they don't. They can't. And I think there's going to be a lot more victims out there than we are surprised at hearing. I mean, airlines, I just read, were one of the largest airlines going to lay off another 25,000 people. But when you look at that and you say, okay, I'm going to sit around, and I wrote this in this little article, are you going to sit around on your couch and mope, or are you going to get up and find out what new opportunities they are? We have found through COVID that most of our staff don't want to come to the office until they feel safer, and that's fine. But we're operating just fine, building a condominium development in Seattle with a developer there, working with a local developer here, and we're being able to access all the people, and this is again where your development with is so valuable, I think, going forward, because I think this is the new norm of how we're going to end up working. So the COVID just sped up a lot of companies, and more to come. And people are now getting used to buying online, like they've taken food online. In fact, a restaurant client that we're now working with has found out that their business of take home is now greater than the business they were doing inside the store. Now, would that have ever happened? One of the clients that we were working with, it's a pizza place. 70% of their business was walk-in and 30% was delivery. Since COVID, 70% now is delivery, and 30% is walk-in. So look at that in the way of how that changed a business that's going to survive and maybe even do better. So for me, what businesses and what opportunities can we look at to go after as far as an agency? And we make the contact. We don't wait for an RFP. We just go out and knock on the door. And if, I'm used to getting no, but if you don't ask, you will never get a yes.
Well, it's one of the things I remember when I first met you and Bob, and we had lunch. You talked more about the business of the advertising business than you did the advertising of the advertising. I liked the idea that while I think you've always appreciated a creative idea, you also understood how to make money, how to build businesses. You've had a pretty interesting career of creating conflict agencies and holding it, companies, and even this thing that you've recently engineered coming back into Vancouver with DDB, I think is a testament to your understanding of how the business works, more so than, understanding how to brainstorm a good idea, pitch a good idea, persuade a client to do something hard. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the business of the business. You mentioned the majority of small agencies in your experience have a client concentration problem. And I love the fact that it's a problem, because I think most agencies think it's a good thing. Hey, I just landed a big car dealership account, a big spirits account, and they're now 50, 60% of my revenue. I think you and I would look at that as a major red flag. And unfortunately, most agency owners would look at that as a home run, like I've just arrived. And client concentration is an example of people not truly understanding the threats of that to their business. You've also talked a lot about exit strategies and how difficult it is for people to actually sell their business, and all the misnomers and naivety they have around what their business is actually worth. What are some of the other areas that you think that we just get it wrong, not in the craft of advertising, but in trying to be business owners?
Well, I think what happens is, for myself, I went through art school and decided I was pretty good at drawing, but not necessarily the best at it, and became more suited to selling and understanding the situation, and have grown up through being able to run printing presses because I had to, and being able to make plates. And I just knew the business, and I learned the business, and I ended up being more of a deal guy, I guess, and not so much an agency guy, even though I'm probably known for, being a crazy guy in the business. But the deals for me that I could see that was called into a situation just yesterday. A client of mine called me down and said, "Hey, Frank, we want to talk to you about something that has nothing to do with advertising, but it could have to do with advertising. We're looking at putting some features into our facility that we can call a thrill ride or an event." And I said, "Yeah, I know how to do that." Well, we can promote and do the advertising of it later. But what happens to your question is that I know so many agencies out there, and they're most of them are in the less than $5 million in revenue. Okay, maybe they're probably $2.5 to $3 million in revenue, and one of their accounts is representing most of that revenue for them, 50 to 60% of them. Well, you're never going to sell that agency to anybody unless you sell yourself with it, and that's the problem. The person gets to a point, they get to their 60s or 50s, they think their business is worth something. It's really not. And people will say, "Well, sure it is. I got goodwill. I got all this. I got this client and everything else." I say, "Well, if you want to sell your agency, you're going to have to come with it for 3 years until we figure out whether or not we can keep that client happy, or whether we even want that client, or whether we even want to buy your agency. And they go, well, I don't want to work for that much longer. And I guess say, well, then we just close your doors then. Why? Well, nobody's going to pay you any money. And the other thing that you have to know is there is no network out there anymore, whether it's Omnicom or Havas or WPP or Interbrand or whatever you want to call it. They don't care about any cities. They don't care about Vancouver, in my opinion. They don't care about Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer. They don't care anymore about small cities. There's just nobody that's going to come into Vancouver and buy my company like they did 20 odd years ago. In fact, at that time, they weren't buying me. They were buying an account. They were buying McDonald's. They wanted McDonald's around the world. And we happened to be an agency that happened to have it. And we had it across Western Canada. That was of interest to them. But if they're going to come to Red Deer, Alberta, not picking on it, and you've got the local hardware store there, they don't care. There's not enough margin in it for them. And I think what we created with what we just did with DDB could be a model for where they want to go forth in the future. Now think of it for a moment. I'm not giving away all the secrets, but the point is if they had 5 or 6 big major accounts where they had Home Depot and they had McDonald's and they have Volkswagen or some other accounts, they say, hey, we'd like to go to a city where we have those accounts and we'll give you those accounts and you can pay us a royalty. We don't have to have any staff or any rent. We don't have to have space. And the fact is that most of these big holding companies are in really situations where they have to get rid of space. And what are they going to do with it? Nobody else wants it because everybody's found out a way to work from home. So what do we do with 50,000 square feet? I don't know. Maybe the building will turn it into condominiums later, but in the meantime, they got to keep paying that rent. And so the world has changed in the structure, and people who want to work going forward, there's so many opportunities, in my opinion, right now, maybe after COVID, that if people have an open mind to say, what can they create or invent? So for me, I'm very excited about the process of going forward. And you said this next chapter for me probably is going to be the most exciting, seriously.
Well, I mean, and I'm excited to not just watch, but hopefully participate. And I love your affiliation in the early days, kind of coming on board with Communo. You mentioned geography and both brands and agencies rethinking the importance of local markets. You mentioned office space, which is oftentimes the second largest expense on an agency's P&L is their mortgage or their leasehold. And then you mentioned talent. What's sort of your thought on reimagining how agencies attract talent, retain talent, full-time versus contingent? How is that all changing?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that because I think it's a work in progress. I mean, we unloaded the complete team from DDB. We took on about 22 people that are coming over from the Vancouver office, and mind you, we've only met, I guess, about 3 or 4 of them because of COVID, but they're all working from home and still operating. Brought over the current management with Patty Jones running it, and all of their creative people, and we're in the process of probably looking for hiring creative people, and we're conducting that all through Zoom calls. And so I think that when we end up having to recruit new people, we'll do it through probably people that we know and other people to help us. So I think the recruiting process will be pretty much the same as we've always done. I don't think there'll be a big change in that. But I guess some of it's going to be work in progress as to how we find not only creative people, but also account executive people. And we don't want to find traditional people that would have come to us prior. I think we're looking for someone with more business savvy. I mean, we're working now with digital people that work for sports teams and things like that, where we wouldn't have thought of that before, because some of the products and services that are coming to us now look like we can actually manage the media. Manage the process and manage the media, and then get a trading desk or a media rep house to take some of the things that we're looking at. So it's a brand new world, and how we staff it and how we look for our people in the future will be different than we have ever done in the past. And I don't know that pathway yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah, I think that I've been disappointed, despite all of these external validators that agencies are being disrupted. They still are kind of married to this old school thinking that if there's going to be a service to sell, they have to source that talent, they have to hire that talent, they have to incur the expense of that talent. And we're just seeing a lot more innovation in the form of interesting alliances, partnerships, contingent workers, partnerships with small agencies, utilization of freelancers, accessing people from around the world that are specialized, and bringing them in, flighting them in on a solution and getting them out so that they're not a burden to the agency's overhead and they're not a burden to the client who has to pay for somebody they're not using.
I told our creative director, Craig here, Redmond, I said, look what we've done. We're called PS, Farmer Stamnus DDB. We're independent. We control our destiny, and we have the network of one of the best agency networks in the world called DDB. I said, right now, if you want Keith Reinhardt to work on a campaign for you, here's his number. To phone him up. You get Bob Scarapelli, who used to work for DDB in Chicago. Phone him up. I mean, the point being is that we can bring the best resources from around the world because we're part of a network, but we're independent. We run our business the way we want to run it, and we can decide what margin of profit that we want to make, and we're not owing ourselves to shareholders on a public company, but we got the best of both. And I think that maybe, like we've had, since that announcement went out about what happened, I've never had this much notoriety ever in my entire career. But we also had 6 advertising agencies phone us and tell us that they're for sale. Seriously, and when we haven't had a chance to look at any of them yet, but you got to wonder why they're for sale. Because you've got to look at it and say, well, maybe they got to a point where they know that they either get more involved, change their model, or die.
Yeah, I think part of it would be they sense that you have some interesting momentum, and there's a lot of agencies that are feeling the opposite of that. They're feeling the effects of the recession. They may be feeling the drain of doing something for a couple of decades and it not panning out as much as they had liked. Ryan, why don't you come back and join us? We've got about 15 minutes left, and it looks like the chat has been quite active. Your fingers are probably sore from keeping up with everybody, but why don't you throw a couple of doozies at Frank here and see if we can help some people out. You with us, Rye?
Maybe disappeared.
I think he's around and trying to scramble to figure out how Big Marker is going to help him in. Here he comes.
Going good? Can you hear me okay now?
There you are.
Great. The first question comes from Adam Winterton, and he'd like to know from Frank and from Chris. Probably start with Frank. How should agencies respond to the rise of in-house teams? Obviously, Frank, the rise of in-house teams since 2013 was 52%. It's now over 80% in 2020. How should they respond? Start with Frank, and then we'll go to Chris.
Well, first of all, you have to ask yourself the question, why? And why is it happening? Well, obviously, in my opinion, agencies aren't providing the service to them that they want and need. And quite frankly, when you look at it, a lot of things that agencies were providing, clients can do better and faster because they have in-house teams. And a lot of them were, just to give you one quick example, remember years ago when we were doing the work for McDonald's, we'd be doing a French fry coupon. And of course, the creative director wanted to win an award on it at Cannes. And we'd be doing this French fry coupon. And by the time we got it all done, it was a $22,000 coupon where you could go to Instaprint and get it for $500. And my point was, let the client do it. Let them do it, or give it to them for free, because you've got bigger things to worry about. What the clients have done, quite frankly, what we're looking at doing is we're recommending to our clients, this is much work this is the work you can do inside. You can do it cheaper and faster. Let us work on the strategy and the bigger problem.
Yeah, I just add to that. I think that even listening to Frank from the past 45 minutes, you heard him use the word consulting 3 times. I think agencies are bifurcating into what Tim Williams calls the magic or the logic side of the business. And it's only a problem if you're if you are a logic provider that never learned how to charge for or get paid appropriately for strategy, or if you're a strategy provider that's now trying to keep a large production team fed. It's when there's a disconnect between your brand positioning and your operating model, versus if you can reconcile that, we're going to be more strategic, and then you can sell more strategy. You don't really care that the client takes a bunch of the production in-house. Or if you're going to become a production agency, then you need to become significantly more efficient at what the client is able to do and just build a better mousetrap. It's when you are half pregnant and you're trying to decide how do we become both strategic and production that you're going to probably mess up your pricing, probably mess up your operating model, and probably be put out of business by an agency that's a little bit more clear about what they want and how to staff for it.
One of the things to add to that too is that a lot of the big agencies have tried creating their own agency for a client, particularly like McDonald's or whatever. Even Lululemon has got a big staff. Most of them have been hired from DDB, believe it or not. But sooner or later, that person doesn't want to work in that environment anymore because all they get to work on is one client. So we're working with a client now to say, what do you want to service in-house and what do you want to do out of house? And it's a pretty simple exercise. But if you don't know that's going on right now, it's just going to continue. It's going to continue.
That's really great. Out of the United States here, for Frank, who are some, Brent Baldwin here asking the question, who are some industry experts in the U.S. that you respect and are up, and basically are also innovating? Some of the OGs.
The agencies or the like Jack Igel or
more guys like you from the U.S. like that you think are still doing.
I want to take lessons from just about anybody, and I can. I go on many of these seminars just to listen to what other people are saying, whether it's on TED Talks or whatever. There's a lot of smart people out there, including the guys and likes of, when I talked about Keith Reinhardt, and I don't ever think of myself as an expert that can't continue to learn new tricks from somebody. And I'm more than pleased to sort of put a list together for this gentleman if he wants to send me an email, because, with catching me a bit off guard right now, mine just goes a little bit blank,
No, that's okay. I think the insight there is even better. I've pinned it to the top, is you're still learning.
I think you have to be. I mean, when someone says something, they say, well, damn, that's so smart. How did I listen? I had 3 or 4 people I went to when I, that I couldn't understand something. Somebody was challenging me with something, and I would go talk to someone and say, I don't get this. And they look at me like I was the dumbest guy in the world, probably was. But they said, you don't get what this person's doing? I go, no. What they doing? They're challenging me. Why would they challenge me? Well, and you go, I never saw that. I never saw that coming. I never knew that. So, I mean, the point is that, here's one thing I started saying to everybody. You need a coach, okay? What do you mean you need a coach? What happened to you? You put on 20 pounds during COVID. Well, yeah, I know. Well, why? Well, I'm not training the way I gave up my coach. Well, the coach pushed you into better shape, right? We need business coaches and people who push you, because basically, I don't want to say it, but I will. People are lazy, and you expect the same old, you're going to get the same old. If you want to push yourself to do something different, where's the catering business going to go? Where's the wedding photographer? What are they going to do? How do you find out? How are you going to hold a wedding now that's really unique and different? Well, then you got to think about it. but they're not. I could create a new venue for getting weddings, and how is it going to be serviced, and the priest and everything else. How are you going to do that now? What do you make your, how's the travel industry going to get back in? I mean, there's so many empty venues. I mean, for me, there's a field of opportunities out there that would never have actually come about if it wasn't for COVID.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll give you an example. There's an event marketing company that I'm aware of that, rather than, as you say, sit on their couch and pout, they said, okay, if this is the new world, what's in demand? And they were very good at sort of quick turn fabrication things for like trade shows, and they started installing the pyroglass or whatever, the screens in front of cashiers, and they're going to do $10 million this year just on the creation and install of these glass partitions. And I thought, what a brilliant pivot. I don't know that that's their dream job, but that's a way of remaining relevant and being monetized during a really crazy time by adding a legitimate service that nobody had figured out yet.
Well, I went to a restaurant in Vancouver that had glass on either side of the table, or plastic, or whatever it was. And it sounded like I was going to sit in this little cocoon there for a minute. But after, there was 4 of us having dinner. But after 2 minutes, I really liked it better. And they said, why? And I said, because first of all, I don't feel closed in. I can see through the glass. But the fact is, I can't hear what the person at the other table is saying. And I thought, what remarkable. I don't have to listen to them, and they don't have to listen to what I'm hearing here, because I believe people listen to each other's conversation. We had our own conversation, and I didn't find it threatening at all. I found it to be more of a convenience. But if you sit back and listen to if you want to sit back and you got to what your business is going to look like going forward, I think that take all the advice that you can, because there's a lot of new businesses out there that are going to be created that advertising agencies can look at as their target to say, how can I work with you? If you're open-minded to all of this.
Question out of London, England here. Tony asking, especially in Europe, agile talent and contingent workers have taken hold many years ago. Is that the case in North America? He said Chris or Frank.
You mean more people working from home or working?
He put in brackets Communo and working in a couple other platforms.
Well, the biggest opportunity for Communo and biggest opportunity for creative directors is to get outside of their own pack of creative people, and same thing applies to account people. But the fact is that every creative director I've ever run across in my life, and they're still basically the same. Well, I got my team. Yeah, I know. But what else is out there that's different, better, unique than your team? Because you're going to get the same thing that you got from the same people all the time, because you only reach out to them. So the point being is, for me, get out of your own shadow.
Yeah, Chris,
amen.
He's messaging me, Chris, here, asking, do you actually, it's spelled wrong, but I think he's asking, do you actually use it at your company? And he doesn't know he's asking Chris. He doesn't know the name of your company, Chris. So.
Yeah, we did. We've done, I think, our last campaign that we created for a major client in Vancouver, the talent came from some from Vancouver, some from Toronto.
Yeah, and on our side, and for Cult,
the question was,
Cult is a marketing services firm. We made the decision to be more magic, less logic 8 years ago. We spend millions of dollars annually on an agile workforce. It's absolutely been a game changer for not just the financial health of our business, but for my personal sanity and stimulation. I'm spending more time doing the things I want to do, less time doing things that I have to do to keep underutilized mouths fed. In the past 90 days, I've affectionately referred to Communo as a creative refugee camp, because thousands and thousands of new creatives have joined the platform from either laid off agency jobs or marketing side jobs, where they're now looking for either temporary gig work, or they're deciding maybe I don't want to go back and have a quote unquote real job again. I'd rather manage my own portfolio of business and work with multiple agencies or multiple clients and diversify my portfolio a little bit to become a bit more recession proof. So I'd say it's emerging and in the North American market, and COVID has accelerated the trend where it's just making people much more open-minded to having different types of employment relationships.
Right.
There's one about Frank. Someone had a question about, his name's Mark here. He had a question in regards to what's your advice for the smaller boutique agencies under $1 million? And basically, what advice do you give to the smaller boutique agencies that bill under $1 million as the world changes here?
Well, I think that that's a pretty large question, even though it's under $1 million. I mean, you have to take a look at your mix and what your mix is. If you had 5 clients that were equal spending or equal of size, then you're probably okay. My question would be to the person that has $1 million, which what market are they in, and they have an opportunity to expand. I mean, one of the things how I expanded the agency was I had 2 accounts in Vancouver that wanted to move to another market. One was McDonald's, the other was the Hudson Bay. And I went to Calgary, Edmonton, and Winnipeg, and I would look for a like-minded agency that thought like me. And I'm sure that your $1 million can match up with another agency. And I ended up saying, well, I got $2 million worth of, or $4 million worth of revenue, and you're a $4 million agency. Let's put it together and be 50-50. Well, I was able to trade somebody else's Bitcoins for an interest in an agency that I ended up growing to fairly large. So I'd be looking at who has another market, another agency that's your size, if you want to get bigger, and somebody that you can get along with in a partnership where you can double your size. And take your risk down from being maybe too dependent on maybe one account. Problem is, you got to look at your account, because every agency I've ever looked at, and I've probably bought 20 of them over my lifetime, or taken over 20. Most of them I got for free because they had problems. Seriously, I believe it. Because they got problems, and they're going to lose money if they don't do something. So $20 million agency or $1 million agency's probably got costs of 60 to 70% against that. When you look at it after your salaries, you're probably not taking a lot out. The only way you're going to get more money out of it is to either spend on your own or do a merger with somebody.
Yeah, I would just layer in 2 things. The smaller you are, the more specialized you better be. And specialized doesn't have to be your craft. Your specialization could be your clientele, catering to a unique geography or a specific industry. But it goes back to that point Frank made earlier, is you got to start managing your business like a business. You got to think a little bit more holistically around joint ventures or partnerships or growth potential. Because there are just way too many. The world does not need another, $500,000 creative shop. There's thousands of them. So you better find a different way to differentiate.
I agree.
One more question, and then we will have to wrap, just to in respect for time. Jem asked, I'm not sure I understand the question fully, but I'll ask it anyway. Will the minority participation in agency supply chains suffer as a result of COVID-19?
I think that all of our companies are looking to make sure that we it's a very big topic that's right on the agenda for all the agencies, and it's not just nationality, gender, but it's men and women, and we're very careful as to making sure that we have the right mix going forward. But it is important.
Well, and the plug I do for Communo is there is no better way to gain access to different sorts of thinkers or geographies or demographics or ethnography than accessing 38,000 different professionals from around the world. So I don't think we can't use the excuse anymore. Well, I'm in Portland or I'm in Halifax or I'm in Miami, and it's all kind of the same person. It's got no, you have access to a global talent pool. You're just not looking hard enough if you're not trying to find ways to complement your current personnel with different types of genders, orientations, races, etc.
I tried to get to everyone. We'll do one more because Brian Barris just posted one. It seems like freelancers are actually looking for full-time or larger contracts. This creates a problem while you're constantly vetting new freelancers. How do you create a stable network of freelancers? We'll start with Frank, and then we'll move to Chris. And maybe I think he wants to hear about the technology now as technology increases.
Well, I think what you guys have got for freelancers is outstanding, and it's just a matter of getting more creative heads and agencies to expand their thinking and expand their network. For me, I'm not embarrassed to phone anybody that I believe has the talent. I don't care where they come from, I just feel that if you're not doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice as well as the client. Get the best people you can. You know, here's what we've done wrong in our industry, and I'll use this as an ending part of it, and hopefully it doesn't offend people. But when I was doing a TED Talk, and people said to me, like I've said, pretend I'm the best heart doctor in the world. Let's pretend I'm the best at what I do. Let's pretend that Frank Farmer is the best at what he does. And I'm this best doctor of heart surgeon. I've never had an operation go bad. I've never had anybody die on my table, and my operation is $100,000 a year because I've built myself up to be able to charge that. And here's the problem. Guy comes to me and says, sorry, sir, I know you're the best heart doctor, and I know you can save my life or save my business. I've only got $20,000. My line was, I guess you're going to die. You know what we've done? We take the 20, and the next time it's going to be 10. The next time it's going to be fine. So if you don't stand up for yourself and you don't offer up what you believe is a real value, you'll never make it in this industry. You'll never be the.
I'll let Chris answer that too. I'll just cheer you on. One of the things we did on Communo for those listening is our average job hovers around $55,000 to $60,000, and we never let the slider go below $5,000. But our enemies are Upwork and Fiverr, where everyone's just driving the price down. It's a race to the bottom. We're ruining our own industry. But Chris, why don't you take the final word, and then you can talk about Frank's book again and talk about the offer, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, why don't you put that up on the screen? Well, I mean, my thought when I heard that question is the worst time to look for a freelancer is when you're desperately in need of a freelancer. It's what you should be constantly nurturing a network of talent. There's kind of a feature within Communo to build your own tribe, so to speak, of people that you're a fan of their work, people that you're a fan of their character. You want to get to know them better, so that, I kind of think of my own agency as like a baseball team where I've got my major league players that are on the full-time payroll and they go and play every night, but I've got a AAA and a AA team on the sideline of people that I'm constantly nurturing, maybe finding a small project for, or finding excuses to get to know better, so that when the client, first of all, it's helpful that I can be responsive when I'm sitting in a room and the client says, does anybody know somebody? And secondly, if I find a real rock star, I'm now like I just see dollar signs. Like, you're brilliant at what you do. I can go sell that. And so that being exposed to exceptional talent, I find myself being more proactive in selling things that I wasn't even selling before, because I now have somebody that's capable of doing that. And so you need to nurture the relationships, not just, think of it as, this isn't Tinder where you're just looking for a one-night stand. This is more like eHarmony, where we're trying to create more lasting relationships with a greater number of people.
All right, this slide about his book, Chris, and then I'll talk about the deal.
We need to run. We're a few minutes over. For those that remain fans of Frank and want to get much more than this 50 minutes could provide, let me give a shameless plug for his book, available on Amazon. Also, just because of the kind of guy he is, a good portion of the proceeds go to the National Agency Benevolent Society, which helps the creative class with a host of personal and mental and emotional issues. So please do pick up his book. And then if you go to the next slide, Ryan, I just want to take a plug for Frank mentioned. One thing he would highly recommend is a coach. Communo provides coaching. We're firm believers in continuous learning and professional development. So if you find yourself, you have a bunch of these tools, but you're not sure how to use them, or you need to maybe shift your paradigms, we're able to provide some of that at scale. And this is that offer that Ryan was going to make. I'll be hosting one of these coaching sessions on Tuesday, free of charge, so you can get a taste of what kind of learning is available to you.
That's it, folks. we will publish these questions, and Frank, I will follow up with you on some of those inspirational people that you still follow. And thank you so much, Frank. You're honestly, you're a legend, and people like you that continue to give back deserve the credit. And I wish you all the best. And thanks for being a believer in us. And thank you, Chris. See everybody Thursday. The 25th. Is that sorry? I've got the date wrong.
Next Tuesday, the 28th.
That's next Tuesday, the 28th. It's already, so we've had a bunch of people sign up already today. So please get in there. We're only accepting 30. Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Take care.
Bye.